and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. We got some tea tonight, and we are joined by political commentator Sabrina Kosmas, as well as host of Underreported Stories with Chrissy Clark. Of course, Chrissy Clark. Thank you, ladies, for coming on today. We're excited to chat with you, and I'm excited because tonight is a big night. They call it, Chrissy, a joint session of Congress, although we might as well just call it the State of the Union, because most of the time, a president a month into his first, month in office is not really prepared to give a State of the Union address. They haven't had enough time to get very much done. So they call it a joint session of Congress, and the president is going to address this joint session. I'm calling this a State of the Union address because I feel like so much has happened with Donald Trump and his administration during his first month in office that we can appropriately probably call it that tonight. What do you think?
Absolutely. I was just going to say, I'm thinking from everything from the immigration crisis that's been curtailed to the economy, already seeing upticks in the economy and the tariff implementation that we happened today. I actually think that hearing from the president the day that those tariffs go into action will probably ease a lot of the minds of people at home. Couple that with what we've seen with foreign affairs and the media trying to skew what happened between Trump and Zelenskyy. Again, hearing straight from the president's mouth what his plans are and ensuring a peace deal over there. Plus, I mean, Donald Trump is just the perfect person to exemplify restoring common sense. We know yesterday that the Senate did not pass the Protecting Women in Sports Act that was going through in the Senate. And so to hear him kind of call out people who are prioritizing men over women in sports spaces, I just think all of that is going to come to a culmination tonight. It's going to be very interesting to watch and hear from his mouth, not the media's.
Yeah, no, it's Sabrina, I can't believe they didn't pass this, the bill that Chrissy's talking about yesterday. And maybe Donald Trump ought to get up there tonight and just one by one go through every name of every Democrat who voted against protecting women in sports and allowing men to compete against women in sports. The whole thing is kind of insane that we've even found ourselves in this place. But what are your expectations tonight? Because I think that for me, as a person who obviously was RNC co-chair, so I was very intimately involved with the campaign. Obviously, I'm a family member, but I've gotten an opportunity to see like the ramp up into Donald Trump being inaugurated, and he really hit the ground running. I feel like he was actually doing so much and setting things up so that day one, whenever he walked in that Oval Office, he could start executing things. And I actually feel like tonight, I really expect him to give us a State of the Union address. I think a lot of it will probably be on the economy. I think people are getting a little worked up and they're saying, oh, well, prices haven't come down, very quickly. When is that going to start happening? I mean, people have to remember, Sabrina, we are still dealing with the ramifications of the past 4 years. And it's not like you can just rip a Band-Aid off and everything is going to be set back on the up and up again. It's going to take a little while for our country to feel the impact of Donald Trump from an economy standpoint, at least. But I think he's going to give us a lot of information tonight. And I think he's very excited to deliver what I will call a State of the Union address this evening.
Absolutely. I mean, most presidents require at least 100 days before instituting a State of the Union, whereas President Donald Trump has done so much already in his first, month and a half in office. Yeah. So I think that he's definitely going to talk about his success, with the border, the fact that we have a record number of crossings that have been stopped, the successful deportation of so many violent criminals. I think, as you mentioned, he is probably going to touch on the economy in terms of we have to be a little patient. There are things that are going to take time. It's not as quick as stopping what's happening at the border. So I know that while a lot of people are very anxious because, grocery prices have not dropped significantly quite yet, we have to remember it's been a month and a half. I have full confidence that if anyone can do it, it's President Trump. And as Chrissy mentioned, I have a strong feeling that on a cultural level, he is going to talk about so many Democrats that have just put the kibosh on keeping men out of women's sports, especially when you have 80% of the country agrees with keeping them out of women's sports. So I don't understand how not a single one of them has woken up to what their constituents want.
Yeah, it's rather shocking. Just to go back for a second to the economy, I was thinking about it earlier today, and obviously I'm a person who is very interested in physical fitness, and I'm into the gym as often as I can be. Sometimes I don't always get the time I want, but when, I think about people who kind of go from 0, but they want to get to 100. Somebody who just one day wakes up and they say, you know what, I want to get in shape today. There's no quick way to just snap your fingers and get in good shape. Guess what? It takes time. You go to the gym one day, you're not going to see results from one day in the gym. You start eating more consciously, you're not going to see results from that. It takes time for all of that to actually culminate in your body changing and you seeing the results you want. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I think our country as a whole is a bit like that. Whether you're looking at the fact that you have regulations being rolled back, I do think the tariffs, that although people are very split on the tariffs, the intent is to encourage growth here in our country, business growth in our country, small businesses. I think if we can see interest rates start to come down, that's a very positive thing. And I think the energy dominance that I think America will once again see is going to help exponentially. The more expensive it is to transport things and produce things in this country, the more expensive all the goods are in this country, right? So everybody's got to remember, it's not going to happen overnight. It's been just over a month so far. We will get there. It's not going to happen in the snap of our fingers. But Chrissy, I want to go to something you just touched on, which is Zelenskyy in the White House with Donald Trump on Friday of last week. People were a little worked up on this one, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It was very interesting to see all of this play out in real time and to be able to witness something that I think was so big and so much bigger than that moment for our country. We've just lived through 4 years of complete weakness on the world stage. Zelenskyy, as far as I'm concerned, thought he was going to walk in that office, that Donald Trump and JD Vance would have a blank check set out on the desk. He was going to sign it and say, like, what number do you want me to fill in here for you? What can we do for you? Because that's essentially, Chrissy, what he was getting with Joe Biden in the White House. I mean, I don't even know if Joe knew what was really going on, but man, they were just happy to just fork the cash over whatever they needed, whatever Zelenskyy needed. And he showed up there with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. It seemed like he's a little pompous. He came dressed, I don't know, if you're going to ask for billions of dollars from the American people and you walk in the White House, maybe show up with a modicum of respect for that house and, what it means. Here's what Donald Trump said, Chrissy. He said, "We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want an advantage. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace." Mic drop, Chrissy. Go ahead.
I love it. I think the key word you said there was conversation. And what everybody in social media gets is a snippet of a really long conversation. Laura, I don't know if you've seen this video, but this is happening time and time again. There's actually a video of Elon Musk walking off stage with X. And in the video, in one video that's gone very viral, it's X walking down the stairs by himself and Elon Musk, a couple steps ahead. Yeah. And in that context, he looks like an awful dad, like he just left his son on the side of the stage. But if you watch the full video, you add 30 seconds, 15 seconds on the front end, 15 seconds at the back end, you actually see Elon Musk, coaxing his son, "Oh, hey, come on this way, babe."
Yeah, he goes back up and he's like, "Hey, come on."
Yep. And he turns right back around and he gets him. Yeah. He's with his son at every second. They've just caught the 10 seconds where it looks off. And I think that's exactly what happened in the same vein with the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting is we snipped the part that was the most dramatic and steamy. And if you weren't part of the MAGA base, you kind of saw it as you were questioning the intentions of what was happening. But you watched that entire 40-minute interview, which is worth everybody's time. But of course, I know time is valuable and not everybody's going to be watching that. As somebody that has seen it, Zelenskyy started that. Zelenskyy picked a fight, and he intentionally picked a fight in front of the American media because he thought he could get morons on TikTok that stand with Ukraine. I don't know if you guys have seen the video of the girl cutting her hair and turning herself in makeup into Zelenskyy to honor Ukraine. It's a real thing. He was trying to market to those people to get them to sow disbelief in this country. And I think that the Russia disinformation campaigns that happen here are real. Russia tries to sow disbelief and doubt in the American public. What Zelenskyy is doing is no different.
Wow. It's so true. You know what? And I love that you brought up the fact that the people get all hysterical over these like snippet videos. I'll take everybody back for a moment to the Very Fine People hoax. If anyone forgot about that, let me go ahead and remind you. That was Donald Trump's first term in office when there was this horrific situation in Charlottesville, Virginia. And Donald Trump came out and he said, here's exactly what he said. He said, there were very fine people on both sides. That's where the media cuts it. And they're like, Donald Trump thinks Nazis and white supremacists are great people. But what he really said is there are very fine people on both sides, except the neo-Nazis and white nationalists who I condemn totally and who should be condemned totally. That's what he said. But they cut it out, Sabrina, because they're dishonest and they want everybody hysterical and they were desperate to get people to hate Donald Trump. You know, instead of respectfully kind of showing up to the White House and giving the respect to the American people, because it's not just about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And I think, you know, President Trump in his statement that I just read there alluded to that. This is the people's house, the White House. When you come to the people's house, after we've given you $200 billion to ask us for more, and you start arguing in front of the media with the president and the vice president of the United States, I just don't know what he thought was going to happen, Sabrina. And it was a good thing in that I think, look, for this situation, I'm sure he's got to come back, right? They can't do this without the United States, and they need our help. And we do want peace. At least most people want peace, unless you're part of the industrial war complex who loves perpetual wars. But most people want peace. And most people look at that and they say, all right, he's got to come back to the table and he's got to be serious about this. And he's got to sit down with America and really make a deal with Russia. But overall, Sabrina, for the optics from the Oval Office, from the leader of the free world, to be able to see the president of the United States in a moment say, you know what, you're not going to come in here and you're not going to do this to our people. You're going to start respecting America again. That wasn't just for Zelenskyy. That was for everyone in the entire world, our allies and our adversaries alike, because everybody was watching that. And I think it was probably a good note for them to take from that meeting.
I totally agree. I mean, the moment that President Trump, you could tell the tide turned with how he was going to speak and defend our country, was the moment that a lot of people are clipping out, especially the mainstream media, which was Zelenskyy threatening the U.S., essentially saying, well, you know, this could happen here. And I was so proud of our president to stand up and at that point be like, we are done. You are not going to sit on a world stage where we have all these other countries watching and disrespect us. That may have worked the last 4 years. It's no longer happening. And I think a lot of people seem to forget that, of course, while Russia is definitely a threat to the U.S., Zelenskyy himself was a paid actor who is essentially a puppeteer for one of the most corrupt governments in the entire world. Ukraine ranks as one of the top 10 corrupt governments in the world, has for a very long time. And all these Democrats and people that are standing with him over our own country, these traitors, seem to forget that. He has completely abolished any opposing media in Ukraine. He is literally picking up military-aged men off the street in order to ship them off to war. And I truly wonder what his intent is. It almost seems like he does not want peace, because otherwise you'd think he'd be more willing to speak to President Trump with a little bit of respect and a little bit of decency in order to bring peace to his people. But it's very hard to watch. But at the same time, Friday, I think, was a monumental moment for the administration.
I think so too. Yeah, don't forget, Ukraine is the place, Chrissy, that Hunter Biden got. Remember Joe went over there and he said he wanted them to fire the prosecutor. They're not going to get the $1 million or whatever it was. All that was Ukraine. Sure, just remind everybody about that. Here is a funny one that came out of Friday. Harris Fight Fund, which I don't know why they're still raising money for Kamala Harris. It's using the Trump-Zelenskyy clash to fundraise. They're fundraising. What are they raising money for, Chrissy? Is Kamala Harris still going to run for something? I mean, some people say governor of California. I don't know, but the Harris Fight Fund called it a disgrace, even though we're describing a meeting and, again, identifying the fact that this was so different from the previous administration, who just let every other country walk all over us. Thanks to Doge, we're finding out the billions and billions of taxpayer dollars that were just being spent everywhere but in America and for American causes. And somehow they feel like at the Harris Fight Fund that event on Friday was, as they call it, a disgrace. Hey everybody, Lara Trump here. Imagine you or your loved ones facing a threat. Your instinct might be to use lethal force, but considering a safer and less lethal alternative first avoids legal complications associated with firearms. As a gun owner, I advocate for having options, and Byrna is a leading choice in less lethal self-defense. Proudly assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Byrna's less lethal pistol launcher, loaded with tear gas and kinetic ammunition, can incapacitate an attacker for up to 40 minutes. This gives you plenty of time to escape or seek help while minimizing the chances of permanent harm. Byrna isn't just about averting tragedy. It actively saves lives without the repercussions of lethal force. Legal in all 50 states and requiring no background checks, Byrna has sold over 500,000 units, and it can be shipped directly to your door. After personally testing the Byrna pistol, I was honestly impressed by its power and its total ease of use, prompting me to purchase units for my own family and friends. Visit Byrna.com/Lara for 10% off my specially curated bundles. That's BYRNA.com/LARA. Stay safe, America. For years, customers have been asking if MyPillow sells cross necklaces like the one Mike Lindell proudly wears every day. Well, guess what? You're in luck. They are excited to announce that Mike has partnered with a jeweler right here in the USA to create beautiful sterling silver My Crosses. You can save 30% today using promo code TRUMP at mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square or call 800-624-3945 and be sure to use promo code TRUMP. You can choose from the women's or men's style and make sure you do it soon because this amazing offer won't last long. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square or call 800-624-3945 and use promo code TRUMP.
The Democratic Party reminds me so much of a bunch of 22-year-old girls coming out of college and dating the same awful men and wondering why the consequences of their actions are, being in relationships with crappy men. It's because you do the same thing over and over and over again. And I think the American people elected Donald Trump to do something different. We have tried to just have peace negotiations, alleged peace negotiations with Ukraine and write them blank checks for years and years and years. And all it did was perpetuate a war. The idea that somebody would come in and try to bring in both parties to the fold to get some sort of concessions and negotiations and ultimate peace deal, and that's seen as controversial. No, I think it's far more controversial to engage in the exact same tactics and expect a different outcome. That's quite literally the definition of insanity. We're not calling Democrats insane because it's like funny conservative talking point. They're freaking insane.
Yeah. And
they're even more insane for thinking that Kamala Harris is going to win anything. Like that is just truly nuts.
Let her try it again. You know what I say? Let her try it again. I would be A-okay with that. Yeah, I still will say I will stand by this forever. And I feel like one day if Kamala Harris ever wants to come on My View on Fox, I'm just saying, or right here on The Right View, I would love to have her. And I would really love to truly ask her, did you ever really want this? Because I still feel like the whole time she was terrified that like they were going to push her through and somehow she was going to end up winning. And then you're the president of the United States. And she was like, oh my God, like, then I'm the president, and then what? I mean, she couldn't even do the job of vice president. She did nothing. Couldn't even be bothered to go down to the border as the borders are. Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. So let her run again. Let her have another crack at it. In the idea that there's a lot of crazy stuff out there. Jake Tapper wrote a book. It's not out yet, but it is supposedly going to tell us, Jake Tapper, again, I'm going to reiterate that, is going to tell us that there was a big cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline. There's a video that I guess has gone kind of viral, Sabrina. It's of me and Jake Tapper when I went on his show, October of 2020, I believe it was, in the heat of the 2020 election. And at a time when so many people were like, what's going on with Joe Biden? And why are they keeping him in the basement? Why is it that every interview he does is from a basement and he can't like get out there in front of people? What is this? And there were a lot of people who were trying to say, like, there's something wrong with Joe Biden. But if you did that, Sabrina, they either took down your social media account. At the same time, I'll remind everybody, too, it's a Hunter Biden laptop story that we were all told was fake, which was actually real. You got kicked off of sites like Twitter if you talked about that at all or tried to insinuate that was accurate or legitimate. So Jake Tapper is now writing this book, and he wants to take us through play by play as to what happened with the cover up for Joe Biden. And Jake Tapper, Sabrina, was part of that cover up for Joe Biden. What do you think?
I was going to say, it feels like just yesterday he was trying to shame you on national television for mocking Joe Biden's stutter, but really you were just stating the obvious, that he had obvious mental decline. Anyone with 2 eyes and 2 ears could have seen it. But Jake Tapper is the ultimate grifter. He was able to monetize covering for Joe Biden for 4 years. And the second he can't monetize that anymore, here he is trying to make a quick buck off a book, acting like he knew all along, or at least, finally admitting that he knew all along. It's crazy.
Yeah. The thing that gets me too about it, Chrissy, is it would be one thing if like we had 4 years of a guy who was just kind of silly and we kind of laughed about it and there wasn't anything that really like detrimentally happened to America. We barely survived 4 years of Joe Biden in the White House. And honestly, I hope at some point we get clarity on who was calling the shots, who was making the big decisions in the White House. I think most people say there's no way that it was Joe Biden. Most of us do not believe that he had the ability to do that. Certainly not towards the end. The last 2 years, last half of his 4 years in office, I don't think that was even feasible that he was making those decisions. But these people out there who covered it up, and I'm talking about folks in the legacy media, I'm talking about folks in the White House themselves, and the people in the Democrat Party who had a very clear view of Joe Biden and the issues. Jill Biden, you have Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, all these people ought to be ashamed of themselves. Look at what happened to our country. People barely made it. You had this embarrassing exit from Afghanistan. You have 2 wars that broke out under Joe Biden's tenure as president, an open southern border, fentanyl deaths skyrocketing in this country. It doesn't feel safe in most places in America. Crime is on the rise. You have foreign gangs on American soil now. There was so much that happened in 4 years that was so bad for this country. And these people who covered it up are the reason.
The problem is that it's not just Jake Tapper. It's a great example, but this is something that happens time and time again in the media. Remember when Politico, we all kind of heard this story that Politico was getting money from the federal government in terms of subscriptions. And at the same time, 2 journalists, it was like the week before, I'm just going to give myself a little pat on the back, because the week before that Politico subscription story came out, there were 2 journalists that were kind of complaining about the fact that they had their stories covered up when they worked at Politico when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop story. And I said, I wonder if the government was paying off Politico the way that the government was paying off, X and Facebook and all these organizations to kind of play hush hush on this story. Turns out that the way Politico went about covering this up was having one of their reporters write a book on the Hunter Biden laptop story a year later, as if Politico wasn't directly engaged in the cover-up. So anytime these reporters put out a book saying like, hey, look at us, we're doing a wider view on all the things that happened under Biden's administration, they're usually part and parcel of a story, because history is written. It's far less oral. It is written in modern day America. And so they think that if they can write it out, they can rewrite and change history, because they don't understand the way that the digital media will stay with us long term. And the evidence that, we have of you and Jake Tapper getting into it, they think that their book is going to circumvent that. And it just showcases not only how dumb they are, but how dumb they think the American people are.
Yeah, they thought we were so dumb that 60 Minutes tried to fully edit a real car crash of an interview for Kamala Harris. And when even the edited version, I think we were all like, wait, what is she even talking about here? That is egregious in the midst of a presidential election to take responses from one of the 2 candidates and alter them. And she's not even actually answering the question she was asked by the reporter. It's crazy that this is where we've landed in America, but thank God we're going to expose all of it. I'll tell you what else we're exposing. We don't even have to try. The Democrats, as we're kind of acknowledging, do it themselves every single day. Gavin Newsom, I know everyone's talking about this podcast. It's called This is Gavin Newsom, Sabrina. And I got to just wonder, you have just had your state ravaged by wildfires. You have people who lost everything. People died. This was a horrible situation. And so much of it seems like it was probably preventable had a few measures been put in place. I don't know, like forest management, like Donald Trump showed up in California several years ago talking about, and of course was mocked over. Like, I don't know, making sure that whenever a fire department hooks up to a fire hydrant, you got water there. You generally want a mayor of a major American city around when there's a crisis situation, those sort of things. But instead, Gavin is starting this podcast. So what do you think? It's kind of shocking.
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on today, because as someone who fled California and was born and raised there, talking smack about Gavin Newsom is my love language. I mean, this man just seems to always top himself somehow. And what a lot of people don't realize is that this is not his only podcast. He's actually had a podcast for about a year with Marshawn Lynch, and Marshawn Lynch's manager, who is his old buddy. I don't know if it's from back in college, but back in the day. So how is it that this governor of California, your state has just been completely destroyed by so many catastrophic wildfires. You have time for not one, but two podcasts. It's obscene. And it's honestly amazing, though, because over the last couple of months, I've seen so many people I know back home in California who are apolitical or left-leaning, who are done with Gavin Newsom, with Karen Bass, with all of these Democrats that have been in positions for far too long. So I think he is completely squandering any chance he has at running for president in 2028. So I love to see him do this stuff. Every time I see a Gavin headline, I'm like, great, this is just making the case so much easier for why he should not run in 2028.
Like, yeah, I'm getting ready. Chrissy, it kind of, to me though, it feels like that this is an indication he wants to run for president. I mean, look, this is a party. I want to talk in a minute about Chicago. You had Rahm Emanuel, who was a former mayor of Chicago, who was, of course, chief of staff to Obama, came out and was talking about what a disaster Democrat cities have with crime. And you want to know what Brandon Johnson, the current mayor of Chicago's approval rating is? I could have never even guessed it could get this low. 6% is his approval rating. It's crazy. But I think that Gavin Newsom sees there is no rising star in the Democrat Party. They are just destitute. I mean, they have hit rock bottom. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to get my name out there a little bit. I'm going to let these people know who I am. This is Gavin Newsom. I think it means he wants to run for president. No?
Oh, absolutely. I will also push back a little bit, though. I don't know if you guys know who Big Gretch is. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. Yeah. I do think as somebody that lived in Michigan, my husband's from Michigan, his whole family's from Michigan. It's crazy the fact that she won re-election. It showcases some sort of star power that pulls people towards her in a way that simply is mystifying to people on the right. I don't get it, but at the same time, I can't deny that it exists. So I think Big Gretch is a contender. But other than that, yeah, Gavin Newsom is absolutely, it's very clear. To me, what this showcases, though, is, it's Gavin Newsom, it's Andrew Cuomo, it's Meghan Markle. Stop hiring PR people, okay, guys? Like, stop. The PR people would be doing you a good service to tell you, I don't think a podcast is a good idea. I don't think a line of jams when the whole country hates you is a good idea. I don't think running for the mayor of New York is a good idea. No one likes you. Like, go sit down. That's what a good PR agency would tell you, but they don't do that. They tell you to start a podcast, a second one, right, Sabrina? A second.
Well, maybe these PR agencies are actually leading them down the wrong path, because guess who doesn't have a PR agency? Right here. I don't have one. Guess who else doesn't have one? Donald Trump. Nobody in our family has a PR agency. Nobody told us any of this stuff. You gotta be like a little bit real. Common sense about things. Yeah, and a little bit real. I'm glad you brought up Andrew Cuomo, though. He had a 17-minute announcement video to announce that he was going to run for mayor of New York. And he acknowledges, Sabrina, that he says he made mistakes in the past and he's learned from them. What do we think? Is Andrew Cuomo, he's got good name recognition, and it is a bit of a disaster in New York City. So I know they're looking for something new, but are people just going to forget about everything that happened during COVID, do you think? Where do we think Andrew Cuomo ends up in all this?
I mean, I don't know if I'd say he has good name recognition, but he definitely has name recognition.
It is, yes, touche.
Yeah, like I mean, I wish I had half the delusional confidence of people like Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo.
Yes.
It is pretty wild. Like, we didn't forget that he kept all of these elderly people locked in to retirement homes where they got sick and died alone during COVID for way too long. I mean, I know that New York is in a bad place, but it's one of the most populated cities in the entire world. There's no one else that can run for office there. What is this?
I don't know. And by the way, I'm really curious what's going to happen with Eric Adams. He seems like he's getting like slightly more common sense. He's realized, Chrissy, that it was a complete disaster to be a sanctuary city. That, I mean, it's cost, I think, the city of New York $12 billion throughout the course of Joe Biden's time in office. All these illegal immigrants coming in and having to house them and having to take care of them, giving them the debit cards with $5,000 a pop on them, all of those things. So Eric Adams is kind of like, we don't want this anymore. We don't want to be a sanctuary city anymore. And we've got to get a handle on this. In my mind, there's some space where Eric Adams is toying with the idea of running for mayor of New York again as a Republican. And that would be quite a situation. And I will say, as we're getting off the California topic, I'm going to reiterate, California, I believe, is poised to have a Republican governor back in office. But what do you think? Would Eric Adams ever become a Republican, do you think, Chrissy?
I don't know. It's one of those things like Rick Caruso when he was running for mayor of LA. He was still running as a Democrat, but for all intents and purposes, he was the Republican on the ticket. And I think Adams is doing the same thing. When you actually look at just like the political like analysis of Adams versus Cuomo, if that was going to be the two in the primary or after the primary, you know, they both have a tick in their column. So I don't think people are going to be voting based on personality if those are the two that end up being there. They're going to be voting more so based on policy. And yeah, I mean, unless Andrew Cuomo can somehow get to the right of Eric Adams in this race, which would actually make him a lot more palatable to, I think, a lot of people in New York City, I could absolutely see Adams winning again.
It is one of those things where, you know, there's some places in America where, you know, the people who are running are Republicans. And I won't call out anybody, but there's somebody in our area down here in Florida who does it. But they say, I have to run as a Democrat. Jim Justice, by the way, who is a senator from West Virginia, was a governor of West Virginia for a long time. And he was a Democrat for a long time. And it was one of those things where he's like, well, I'm basically a Republican, but, you know, I have to run as a Democrat because otherwise no one will vote for me because it's always been a Democrat, you know, area and state and whatever. But hopefully those times are changing because it is cool to be a Republican. And just to wrap us up today, and the idea that we've got nobody that we can foresee as a real shining star in the Democrat Party. Turns out Tim Walz thinks differently. He may be considering, guys, running for president in 2028. Tampon Tim. Sabrina, does he have a shot?
If you can't even win your own home county while you're running for VP in one of the most crazy elections in modern history, I think it's looking a little bleak. Maybe he does need a PR person. I will give him unsolicited PR advice all day. Please do not run. Spare yourself the embarrassment. Go back home, eat your little hot dogs at the fair, and call it a day. Like, why would he even want this at this point? Was this last election run not embarrassing enough? I don't know.
I kind of feel, see, that's the thing with Tim Walz, is I kind of am always like, like, I don't want to be mean to him because I kind of feel like sad for him. Like they pushed him into this and they were like, no, you got this, Tim. You get out there. You and your wife get out there on that campaign trail. And
Pose with your gun
like,
and
right? I mean,
gosh.
Christy, not a shot.
No, my husband last night was so funny. He said, I told him the story, and he was like, Tim Kaine has a higher chance of winning than Tim Walz because at least no one knows who Tim Kaine is. Tim Walz is now famous for being stupid. And I was do you want to go on Lara Trump's show tomorrow? Because you just crushed it.
I like the analysis. By the way, that is a good, Tim Kaine has a better shot than Tim Walz. Bless his heart, as we say in my home state of North Carolina. Ladies, thank you so much. As always, you guys are so fun. Sabrina and Chrissy, thanks for joining us here for some ladies' tea here at The Right View. Always a great time. To everybody at home, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great cell plan and feel good about doing it.